The irreducible principle of integrated causality. Performance as a malleable engineered system. The axiom of holistic design, the most fundamental truth underpinning all texts on high performance, is the axiom of holistic design. This is the irreducible principle that peak performance is not a singular event or the result of a single trait, like talent or luck, but a predictable, measurable effect of a precisely engineered, multi-domain system of causes. This system integrates the biological, psychological, and environmental components of an individual or an organization. The foundational truth: performance is the output of three interdependent causal domains. The high-performance philosophy rejects the simplistic view of effort equaling output. It embraces integrated causality. The final outcome is determined by the weakest link in the chain of causes across three critical, interconnected domains. Optimizing one domain while neglecting the others leads to fragility, burnout, and sub-maximal results, as highlighted by peak performance, core performance, and the corporate athlete. Domain 1. Biological causality. The body as the machine. The body is the primary non-negotiable machine for performance, whether the output is physical exertion or complex cognitive problem-solving. The law of adaptive overload, stress, and recovery. Performance growth is the predictable effect of subjecting the system to an optimal level of cause, stress or training load, followed by an optimal level of cause, recovery or rest. High-performance training for sports, tapering and peaking, recovery for performance. Without controlled stress, the system stagnates. Without adequate recovery, the system fails. Burnout, injury. The irreducible principle: growth exists in the space between the stressor and the recovery. This is the fundamental engineering equation for biological malleability. The law of non-negotiable protocols. Basic biological inputs are the highest leverage causes. As the corporate athlete and core performance illustrate, factors like nutrition, sleep, and physical maintenance are not secondary luxuries. They are first-order protocols that determine the quality of all subsequent mental and physical output. Fatigue is the ultimate constraint. If the biological machine is running on compromised fuel or rest, the cognitive and psychological potential is artificially capped. Domain 2. Psychological causality. The mind as the regulator. The mind is the regulator and translator of biological and environmental inputs. Peak output requires mastering the internal landscape. The law of mental elasticity, endurance, and limits. As demonstrated by Endure and the performance cortex, human limits are not purely physiological. They are perceptual and psychological barriers set by the brain. The brain acts as an anticipatory regulator, forcing a slowdown before true collapse. High performance is the effect of consciously altering the psychological cause, the internal dialogue, focus, and perception of pain or pressure, the art of mental training performing under pressure. The irreducible principle. The perception of the limit is the true limit. The law of purposeful focus. The mind must be driven by a clear, internalized reason. Purposeful performance and high-performance habits argue that the highest levels of sustained effort, the cause, are only possible when linked to deep clarity of intention and meaning, the internal cause. This purpose acts as the ultimate motivational fuel and resistance against distraction, ensuring that effort is consistently directed toward the highest value activities, HVAs. Domain 3. Environmental and contextual causality. The system as the constraint. Performance never occurs in a vacuum. It is constrained and amplified by its immediate context. The law of environmental feedback. The environment provides the objective feedback loop necessary for continuous adaptation, monitoring training and performance in athletes. Data, metrics, and performance analysis, Routledge Handbook of Sports Performance Analysis, are the causes that allow the system to self-correct, refine training load, and adjust strategy. Data is the non-emotional mirror of causality. The law of systemic white space, organizational performance. In organizational and group settings, improving performance, performance management for dummies, performance fails not due to individual incompetence but due to gaps in organizational design and unclear processes, the white space. The ultimate cause of organizational success is the clear definition and management of the interfaces between individuals and departments. The irreducible principle: the organization performs as its systems perform, not as its individuals intend. Synthesis. The axiom of holistic design establishes that the quest for peak performance is a multidisciplinary engineering project. Success requires the agency to integrate and manage the non-negotiable biological protocols, the malleable psychological boundaries, and the limiting organizational constraints into a single, cohesive, self-regulating system. The irreducible principle of controlled fluctuation, the axiom of strategic non-linearity. The second foundational principle refines the concept of sustained effort, establishing that peak performance is not a function of maximum continuous effort, but of strategic, controlled fluctuation between opposing states. This axiom of strategic non-linearity is the mechanism for transcending fragility and achieving true resilience and longevity. The foundational truth: fragility is a product of linearity. The vast majority of performance plateaus and failures, burnout, injury, stagnation, are the effect of a linear mindset, the belief that the cause must be continuous maximal effort. The science of performance overwhelmingly rejects this, embracing fluctuation, variety, and intentional contrast as the primary drivers of long-term effect. Peak performance, recovery for performance, the science of running. The causal fluctuation. Stress versus rest, the law of pulsation. This is the most critical fluctuation, the necessity of deliberately and strategically alternating intense periods of work, stress, with complete rest, recovery, the tapering protocol. The principle of tapering and peaking is an irreducible truth across all high-performance domains, not just athletics. A significant reduction in training load, the cause of rest, immediately before a high-stakes event allows the body and mind to supercompensate, yielding a dramatic temporary increase in output, the effect. This mandates that the high performer must schedule rest with the same discipline as work, viewing recovery not as the absence of effort, but as an active, high-leverage cause of future output. Deliberate practice versus mind-wandering. This fluctuation applies to the cognitive domain. The intense focus of deliberate practice, maximal cause, must be balanced by periods of intentional mental downtime, creative exploration, or non-judgmental awareness, mindful sport performance enhancement. This prevents cognitive fatigue and, counterintuitively, enhances problem-solving and synthesis. The irreducible principle. Creative insights and systemic solutions often emerge during the trough of effort, not the peak. The causal fluctuation. Focus versus breadth, the law of variable focus. Sustained excellence requires the strategic fluctuation between the deep, narrow focus required for task mastery and the broad, varied focus required for innovation and adaptability. Single goal focus versus integrated goals. The high performer must fluctuate between the intense singular focus required for executing the most important task, HVA, and the broader awareness required to maintain holistic balance, e.g., career, health, relationships. Burnout is often the effect of a singular focus that neglects the integrated causality of the holistic system. 8 steps to high-performance mandates focusing on what is controllable, requiring the constant fluctuation between internal focus, what I can change, and external acceptance, what I must ignore. The fluctuating cortex. The performance cortex highlights that athletic genius is not defined by raw biological speed, but by the efficiency of the brain's circuitry in selecting and processing the relevant data under pressure. This demands the strategic practice of variable training, the cause, forcing the cortex to constantly adapt and refine its filtering mechanisms, making its output more robust against unexpected environmental constraints. The causal fluctuation. Metrics versus narrative, the law of contextual metrics. In organizational and professional performance, fluctuation is required between rigid, quantitative measurement and fluid, contextual understanding, the tyranny of metrics. The tyranny of metrics highlights the danger, the effect, of prioritizing the easily measurable, the cause. The optimized. Organization must fluctuate between using rigorous data for objective feedback and incorporating narrative and qualitative context for understanding purpose and morale. Performance is never fully captured by numbers alone. The highest level assessment requires the synthesis of both quantitative and qualitative data. This fluctuation prevents systemic rigidity and unethical gaming of the system. Synthesis. The axiom of strategic non-linearity is the operational principle for longevity. It mandates that the pursuit of peak performance is a cyclical, intelligent dance between opposites: effort and rest, focus and breadth, quantity and quality. The true high performer is not the relentless grinder, but the individual who has mastered the timing and intensity of their fluctuations, viewing every moment of recovery or mental wandering as a deliberate, calculated cause for future exponential effect. The irreducible principle of environmental transparency. The axiom of controllable constraints. The third foundational principle asserts that maximizing potential requires treating the external environment, the physical space, the tools, the technology, and the social structures, as a set of controllable constraints that must be continuously optimized and transparently managed. This axiom of controllable constraints is the blueprint for extending individual peak performance into scalable organizational or team success. The foundational truth. The system must serve the output. The irreducible element across organizational, athletic, and technological performance texts is that friction is the universal constraint on output. High performance is achieved by systematically identifying and minimizing friction within the environment, the cause, ensuring that the system allows the desired output, the effect, to be achieved with maximum efficiency. Constraint. 1. Technological. Friction, the optimization of the tool. In software and high-tech performance, the system itself is the most frequent constraint. High-performance code. Texts like high-performance JavaScript and high-performance websites treat code and infrastructure, the environment, as the primary bottleneck on user experience and speed. The principle is simple. Identify and eliminate every micro-source of latency and inefficiency. This demands a continuous, detailed analysis of the system's white space and code structure to ensure the tool, the cause, is maximally efficient for the user's task, the effect. Constraint. 2. Organizational and team friction, the optimization of the interface. In the context of human groups, group performance, accelerating performance, friction arises at the interfaces between people, roles, and processes. Agility and mobilization. Organizational performance, accelerating performance is the effect of system agility, the ability to mobilize, execute, and transform quickly. This is achieved by systematically simplifying and clarifying the interaction protocols, the cause. Friction points are eliminated by establishing crystal-clear roles, removing redundant approval processes, and fostering a shared, transparent purpose. Group dynamics and collective coherence. Team success, group performance, performance management. For dummies, is not the sum of individual talents but the effect of effective team structure, process, and psychological safety. Performance is maximized when the environmental structure, leadership, communication norms is intentionally designed to minimize interpersonal friction and maximize constructive contribution. The ultimate constraint is often the inability to manage conflict and information flow transparently. Constraint. 3. Assessment and feedback. Friction, the optimization of transparency. The system used to assess and improve performance must itself be transparent, fair, and focused on future action, not past blame. Performance review as a causal system. Texts on performance management for dummies, 600 phrases for effective performance reviews emphasize that the review process, the cause, must be oriented toward the effect of future improvement and growth, not merely past judgment. The friction in performance reviews is the lack of transparency, clarity, and the focus on personality over process. The optimized system uses clear, outcome-focused language and links performance directly to the system's larger strategic goals, linking the individual cause to the organizational effect. Feedback for change, performance-focused, smile sheets, and other feedback mechanisms are successful only if they are designed to provide actionable, high-leverage information that identifies system failures, not human failures. The purpose of feedback is to illuminate the constraints on the system and provide the clear cause for future corrective effects. Synthesis. The axiom of controllable constraints commands that the high performer must extend their agency beyond the confines of their body and mind to actively engineer their external environment for maximum output and minimal friction. This involves a relentless pursuit of transparency and efficiency in every system, from the lines of code to the lines of communication, ensuring that every system and tool serves as an amplifier of talent, not a constraint upon it. The ultimate mark of the peak performer is the ability to optimize the system so profoundly that their high-leverage effort becomes the only remaining bottleneck. The unified synthesis, the psychological and ethical imperative for sustained excellence, the axiom of self-determined mastery, the final irreducible truth synthesizing all principles of high performance, from the biological need for recovery to the organizational need for transparent metrics, is the axiom of self-determined mastery. This axiom asserts that long-term, sustained peak performance is not merely a technical or physical outcome. It is the predictable effect of a core psychological and ethical cause, the individual's internalized commitment to continuous growth, self-awareness, and personal accountability within a self-engineered system. The foundational cause. Mastery as a psychological system, sustained excellence is psychologically fragile. It is constantly threatened by complacency, pressure, and the inherent friction of the system. The high performer inoculates against these threats by internalizing the pursuit of mastery as an end in itself, shifting the focus from the external outcome to the internal process. The law of process over outcome. All texts on sustained performance subtly shift the individual's focus from the external effect, winning, high appraisal, profit, to the internal cause, the process, the preparation, the habit. The 10 pillars of mental performance mastery and the art of mental training champion this. When the focus is on the process, the things that are controllable, 8 steps to high performance, the individual maintains agency regardless of external volatility. The irreducible psychological truth. Obsession with the outcome creates performance pressure. Obsession with the process creates flow. The inoculation of pressure. The law of anticipatory rehearsal. Performance fragility is often the effect of being unprepared for the intense cause of pressure, performing under pressure. The optimized mind prepares by engaging in anticipatory rehearsal, mentally and physically simulating high-stress scenarios to habituate the response. This intentional practice transforms pressure from a debilitating threat into a familiar stimulus, allowing the mind to maintain coherence and focus when it matters most. The mind must be trained for the worst-case scenario with the same rigor as the body is trained for the best-case scenario. The inoculation of complacency, the law of continuous self-assessment. The greatest threat to high achievement is not failure, but the success that breeds stagnation. The pursuit of mastery demands the continuous objective self-assessment of the fluid self. This means maintaining an honest, data-driven relationship with personal performance, constantly seeking to identify and improve the next limiting factor, the science of running. The high performer's relationship with their limit is elastic. They find it, stretch it, and redefine it. The systemic imperative, coherence and ethics. The highest level of sustained performance, whether organizational or individual, is inherently tied to ethical and communicative coherence. Performance that is built on manipulation, Opaque metrics or poor communication is fundamentally fragile and subject to collapse. The tyranny of metrics. Coherence in communication, the law of transparent intent. In organizational performance, the cause of accelerating performance is clear. Pervasive communication of purpose, goals, and feedback. Friction is introduced not by mistakes, but by misalignment of intent. Performance management at its highest level is the art of ensuring that individual effort, the local cause, is visibly and meaningfully linked to the organization's overarching strategic direction, the global effect. The ethical standard is set by ensuring that metrics are transparent and fair, preventing the deceptive gaming of the system that the tyranny of metrics warns against. Coherence in self-awareness, the law of psychological acceptance. The individual must achieve a high level of self-awareness about their emotional state, stress levels, and cognitive biases. Mindful sport performance enhancement and the focus on stress, well-being, and performance affirm that peak output is only possible when the inner emotional landscape is acknowledged and regulated. The ability to perform under pressure is preceded by the ability to regulate the reaction to pressure. This emotional coherence is the highest form of holistic design, the seamless integration of mind and body. The ethical cause, the law of purposeful contribution. Ultimately, the texts on leadership and extraordinary achievement, high-performance habits, suggest that sustained, energized performance is fueled by a sense of purposeful contribution. The high performer recognizes that their talent and optimized system should serve something larger than the self. This ethical dimension, the cause of service contribution, provides the necessary psychological fuel to endure the long periods of effort and recovery required by the axiom of strategic non-linearity. When performance is an act of contribution, it transcends mere personal gain and taps into a deeper, more resilient source of motivation. The unified conclusion, self-determined mastery. The axiom of self-determined mastery is the fusion of all, preceding first principles, malleability, holistic design, the belief that the entire self, mind, body, system can be engineered. Strategic non-linearity, the wisdom to time effort and recovery perfectly, maximizing long-term adaptation. Controllable constraints, the discipline to continuously optimize the environment for friction-free output. The master achieves sustained performance not by being lucky or inherently talented, but by consciously choosing and relentlessly refining their entire system, a choice that is driven by an internal ethical commitment to the process of mastery itself. This commitment is the final irreducible cause that guarantees the long-term extraordinary effect of peak performance. The operationalization of the axioms, the methodology of the performance engineer, the axiom of data-driven adaptation. The final synthesized truth of high performance is the recognition that sustained excellence demands not just the adoption of the four preceding axioms, but the disciplined, methodological application of data and feedback to manage the entire system. This is the axiom of data-driven adaptation, which transforms the philosophical concepts into a continuous, self-correcting engineering loop. The foundational cause, feedback as the primary lever of control, the high performer or performance engineer treats every outcome, whether a personal failure or an organizational success, as neutral objective data, monitoring training and performance in athletes. This rejection of emotional interpretation, a form of cognitive friction, in favor of objective measurement, a controllable constraint, is the most powerful act of agency in the pursuit of self-determined mastery. Data becomes the primary cause for all subsequent adaptation. Phase 1. Diagnostic measurement, establishing the baseline of causality. The operational process begins with meticulous measurement to accurately identify the integrated causality of the current system. This phase adheres to the axiom of holistic design, protocol of the causal chain. The engineer must establish clear metrics across all three domains. Biological data, measuring heart rate variability, HRV, sleep duration and quality, and specific metrics of training load and fatigue, monitoring training and performance in athletes' recovery for performance. This data identifies the irreducible biological constraints on the fluid self. Psychological data, measuring focus time, instances of performing under pressure, and subjective well-being, stress mood. This quantifies the effectiveness of the TU. Mental training protocols, the art of mental training. Organizational contextual data, measuring the white space friction, time to decision, communication latency, process bottlenecks, and the transparency of the assessment system, improving performance. This quantifies the impact of the environmental constraints. The ethical imperative of metrics. The data collected must be actionable and ethically sound. Drawing from the tyranny of metrics, the engineer avoids collecting data that is easily gamed or that distorts the true strategic objective. The cause of measurement must align perfectly with the effect of genuine improvement, not just compliance or superficial reporting. Phase 2. Prescriptive intervention, implementing strategic non-linearity. Based on the diagnostic data, the engineer must implement a specific high-leverage intervention, the cause designed to exploit the system's strategic non-linearity. The law of minimal effective dose, MED. Rather than implementing massive draining changes, a linear cause leading to burnout effect, the engineer uses data to identify the smallest, most precise intervention that will yield the maximum adaptive effect. If the data shows low HRV, the intervention is not train harder but schedule 30 minutes of deep breath work, a high-leverage recovery cause. If organizational metrics show a communications bottleneck, the intervention is a simple rule change to clarify one interface, a localized fix to a controllable constraint. The fluctuation schedule. Interventions must be scheduled cyclically, tapering and peaking. Periods of intense focus, high cause, must be predictably followed by scheduled periods of recovery, low cause, to leverage the law of adaptive overload. This is the conscious, data-driven creation of the necessary fluctuation, avoiding the fragility of linear effort. Phase 3, feedback and iteration, the continuous improvement loop. The process is finalized by closing the loop, using new data to judge the effectiveness of the intervention. This embodies the principle of continuous self-determined mastery. The law of zero-based feedback. Every intervention is treated as an experiment. The engineer must rigorously compare the new output, data against the original baseline data, to determine if the cause achieved the desired effect. If the desired effect, e.g., increased performance score, was achieved without a negative secondary effect, e.g., increased fatigue, burnout, the new intervention becomes a permanent protocol, a new rule for the axiom of holistic design. Adaptation. As the ultimate output. The ultimate performance metric is not the individual achievement, but the speed and accuracy of the system's adaptation. The most effective performance engineer is the one who can analyze the data, synthesize the necessary intervention, and integrate the new protocol into the system most efficiently. This continuous loop of diagnostic right arrow intervention, right arrow feedback, right arrow adaptation is the operational definition of sustained high performance. Synthesis. The axiom of data-driven adaptation is the practical methodology that unites all other principles. It is the commitment to replacing intuition, emotion, and hope with objective measurement and calculated experimentation. By treating the body, mind, and environment as a single, measurable system, the individual transcends the limits of raw talent and enters the realm of engineered excellence, where peak performance is the predictable result of a continuously optimized, data-informed system.